Put your hands on top of your head.
Well, I didn't.
Now!
Here comes the jam. Getting down with the truth. The only way he knows how to. Girl, what's his name? We're calling the chief. The chief? You're damn right. He's gonna get that sucker. Yo, track down the truth. You know what a track down the truth. You know and what do they call him? We call him the chief. The chief? You're damn right we do.
I'll bet your mother had a loud bark.
Good morning. This is Morning Coffee with the Chief. I'm your host, Patrick Jordan, on YouTube's Pop Culture Minefield. Now, you can find us on Pop Culture Minefield's Rumble page, their Facebook page, and their Twitter feed. And we come to you every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I guess, what would that be? In East Coast time, that would be 11 o'clock East Coast time. And today we're going to do the movie Blow. Before we get into talking about the movie Blow, I wanted to just remind you guys that you can find me on X at LASD Jordan. I do talk about a wide variety of things. And I did recently end my relationship with KGRA. I had a show there, Morning Coffee with the Chief. Now, I did a show last week. That was officially my last show for a while, and I'll be developing a new show. I'll let you guys know when that comes about. But my last show was actually a really good show. It was an interview with Dr. Christopher Kelton from the Independent Institute, and he's an expert in the housing policy, homeless policy, and they wrote a book, the Independent Institute. He contributed to the book about how Housing First has failed. And that is the policy of the United States. That's the policy that's implemented throughout California and Los Angeles, and it's a failure. And he explains why it was a failure. So, if you want to understand public policies relates to homelessness and why the federal policy is currently failing, I talked to Dr. Christopher Kelton last week, on Briefing with the Chief, and we went into a lot of detail. So just go back and listen to that show. But my relationship with them has officially ended. You can find that show on my X feed as well. So I enjoyed it 2 years. So thank you to the folks over at KGRA, but I'll be going a different direction here and I'll let you guys know. But now I also want to remind you guys, since we're talking about homelessness, we got to talk about the Los Angeles Mission. You can go to the Los Angeles Mission at www.losangelesmission.org and make a donation today. There's about, right around the mission, there's about 8,000 or 12,000 people that are homeless down there. And we got about 65 to 70,000 are homeless in Los Angeles. The latest count will come out probably in a couple of months. I think they do it in January. So they're doing the count now in January, and it'll come out in a couple of months on what's going on with homelessness in Los Angeles. But the Los Angeles Mission does an excellent job. They are a nonprofit, but they're not one of those nonprofits. They're a nonprofit that doesn't get any government money. So don't worry about them taking government money and wasting it because they don't get government money because they make the sign of the cross. So just pull them up today. When I did the feeding in for Thanksgiving, I was talking to the new CEO, and we talked about how he had to take over and lean out the organization. And so they're every dollar they get, they try to squeeze the best benefit for the people who need services down there. So just rest assured, the leadership there makes sure that the money is spent on the homeless. So like I said, any dollar you give today will help somebody on the streets and hopefully get them off the streets here in the city of Los Angeles. Okay, so today we're going to do the movie Blow, but let's bring up our guests. And I only have one law enforcement guest with me today, and we're going to bring up Martin, and he'll help to contribute to the movie as well. And my first guest is, of course, Scott Orr. He's been on before, and want to welcome Scott to the show. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good, Pat. How are you?
How's everything in the volunteer state?
Beautiful. Cold, but beautiful. Sun's out, 20-something degrees. It's beautiful.
20s, actually, if the sun's out, 20 is not too bad. And that's coming from somebody who who grew up in the Midwest. Do you don't get snow there at all, or if you get it, does it melt right away? Is that the kind of thing that melts right away?
Yeah, like when it's clear at night, it'll get down. Like yesterday, the day before, it was when we woke up to let the dog out at 6:30 in the morning. It was 21, but it's supposed to be 40 by this afternoon. So with the clear skies, blue skies, the sun's out, so it'll get up to around 40. It's nice, like you said, out in the sun. You can wear a t-shirt, but you hit those shadowed areas. You want to put your jacket on.
So I since retirement, my general wear a pair of shorts and flip flops, whatever shirt I want, right? And so now everywhere I go somewhere, that's the expectation. But I live in Southern California, so I mean, I'll go for a walk, and it'll be 50 degrees out with sun, and people look at me like I'm crazy. And it's just, it's all. It is when you're out walking at 50 degrees on Southern California, it's fine in shorts. Maybe not a t-shirt. I would probably wear something a little warmer than a t-shirt. But yeah, well, thanks for joining us for the show here, Martin. What's going on, man? Venezuela is changing. This is your hometown. We got Maduro here. Oh, he's applying for citizenship in a local prison. Three hot meals a day and a cot. It's
okay. I haven't seen the news in like 3 days or so. Is that true?
Did it get Maduro? Yeah, President Trump.
The citizenship thing.
No, that's fake. I'm joking.
Oh no. Let me be clear. I wouldn't be that surprised if that mofo did something like that.
You had him going.
I wouldn't be. But
this is the first immigrants, because him and his wife, that Trump has actually let in willingly. So he brought him in by plane. We have special invitation.
I don't know if they came willingly, handcuffs and shackles.
Well, they applied for visas. I can tell you that. I remember when that came public that the government from the state has denied visa to all the government body of Venezuela, and they were so pissed off, and I were keep mouthing them. Why do you want to go there?
Right.
Why are you pissed off for?
They want to come and shop. That's what they want to do. So because you can't get anything down there now, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Again,
shop for toilet paper.
Again, I'm happy to see him out of power. However, the government is
still
composed by the same leeches, so the change is not that big. But I don't like that you went down and did it. That should have been done by us years ago.
Right. Oh, so you're saying the Venezuelans should have taken care of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. There was a time, I think, when the Venezuelan people had the power and to do it. And over time, though, Chavez to start with, and then Maduro gradually.
Yeah, the thing is, there never was a will. They wanted him gone, but they didn't want to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And then the window passed.
Yes, the capability.
The next window, who knows when would have been presented? Maybe 1 or 2 generations more.
Yeah, because you look at what's going on in Iran. So 47 years later. So I mean, the difference is 20 years for Venezuela, 47 years for Iran. And you're saying another 2 generations, and it's mostly the young people in Iran that are fighting back, but not all. Not all young people. You got older people in there. Everybody's.
Yeah, it's always like that. It always take 1-2 generations to people say no more, man, no more.
We've had enough.
That's a problem with human mentality.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I think it has too much to do with hope. Oh, I hope things were going to change. No, if you don't make them change, they won't. What are you talking about?
They used to say in the military is hope is not a viable strategy.
No, it is not.
What was it Obama's thing? Was hope and change.
Yeah.
I always said after his presidency, he left us with no hope and spare change. That's all we got out of him.
Well,
So,
they predicted that medical insurance would skyrocket when they first put out the Obamacare, and well,
that's
the
what's happening.
economists were right, but what do they know, right? The politicians know better.
No, well, but yeah, they the whole Obamacare thing was always a migration to a single payer healthcare, and we have excellent healthcare, right? But we put in all the years to get it, right? And that
Right.
was, and I tried to explain to folks, hey, I did all my time in to get the healthcare, and that's a negotiated benefit, meaning in lieu of extra pay, in lieu of this, in lieu of that, I got lifetime healthcare, right? And people will look at me, well, how come you get to get that? Well, that's what I negotiated for. That's what I did. Well, you have to put in 5 years. For now, it's I did 38 years, but and ultimately, if the single payer king comes, I have to believe they're just going to take our premiums away from us to help fund it for everybody else, and that's where it's wrong. It's because I'm not the only one that's you gave up something, you gave up time off, you gave up pay in lieu of getting health care, and people act like you got something you didn't deserve. No, that's and you don't, when you're 21, I was 21, I didn't even think of it, because I'm 21, I'm healthy. That's right. As I get older, I go, oh, it's kind of a good benefit to get that, right? And but all those years working to get it, But hey, today we're going to talk about the movie Blow. So, Martine, this is this is the interesting thing is what's going on in Venezuela. As you see a little of this in the movie too, and we'll get into it, I guess. That Panama was a narco state, right? And they took out Noriega. And in the movie, our main character is parking his money down in Panama, and it gets nationalized nationalized to the needs of the government. So they just stole this money, and that's the kind of stuff that that's what Maduro had turned Venezuela into, or it still is to some degree a narco state where they're laundering money and they're shipping drugs out and all that other stuff. So I'm glad you're stepping up and you're going to help us with the show. But that's what we're talking about. This when you have these leftists or even just these dictatorships, and it's about money, they start working with these bad actors because the money's just so good. You can't not do it, right?
Yep. Just bringing up the synopsis of
the movie.
Yeah, I mean, just like. Where you worked, you probably saw a lot more powdered cocaine than I did where I worked.
Yes.
Mine
was
90% crack. Now I'd say 95% crack cocaine. But yeah, the money's so good. I mean, I can understand the dealing of drugs. I get it. You don't have any money and it's an easy way out. But then, as we'll see through the movie, that you do bad things happen. So
yes. Well, okay. Let me get back to the movie, and I'll introduce the movie and some of the characters. I think I got some pictures too. So this is based upon a true story. So this the movie is that we're going to review today is Blow. It was released in 2001. It's an American biographical crime drama. Now, and this was, when I was doing some review on this or some research on this, it's a loose adaptation or it's a loose presentation of this guy's life. So it is based upon a true story. It was produced and directed by Ted Demme, about American cocaine kingpin and his international network. And it's I don't know, how do you say this guy's name? George Young? Is that it? You say Young? And that is the main character. It's portrayed by Johnny Depp. That's based upon the book Blow. A small town boy made $100 million with the Medellin cocaine cartel and lost it all. And it does talk about him having some connections with Pablo Escobar. Now, when you read into it, they say it's a lot of this is overblown on his part. Yes, he did have a criminal network. Yes, he did engage in some of this stuff. He was attached to a guy named Carlos later who did work with the Colombians, and and was himself, I think, arrested and prosecuted. But we got a picture of Hung Young when he was younger. Do we have a picture of that? There he is, a high school pitcher. He was a star athlete for his high school, but the background search shows that he was also arrested for solicitation of prostitution. So he kind of had a devious mind there. He was also got into dabbling in marijuana, which we see at the beginning of the movie. I think we got a couple other pictures. Do we have one where he's like middle aged, and then the one where he's older? Martin, that's the one where he's older. I'm saying he did not.
I don't see any difference between this.
Yeah, this one. This one he's clearly younger than those. Go back to the other one though. Did you ever see those ads against methamphetamine, and they showed the young, good-looking kid, and then they get into
not even
meth
once.
not even, and they get hooked on meth, and then it just tears their. When I look at him, he didn't age well. Of course, I'm not much for long hair on older guys, but I think he could cut up and probably look okay there if he trimmed up. But
we got a neighbor that's got long hair and he puts it in a bun like the guy. I got a problem with the buns, and no matter who it's on.
The man buns.
Yeah, the man buns. It doesn't make you look tough or cool. It makes you look stupid. But that's just my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, but he wears his in a bun or a ponytail, and it's like, dude, you're 70 years old. Who are you trying to look cool for? I mean, I get mine buzz cut because it's a lot easier to take care of.
Well, obviously I'm bald, but keeping it trim is just trying to grow it and make it look something. Just cut it. Just trim it. Just accept it, right? And I always think these guys that have the long hair are also trying to look younger. That's my opinion. But my opinion is this guy looks used up. He looks like a grape, I guess. So the cocaine life had a tough life now on him. Now he also partnered with a name. It was Carlos Later. I think we have a picture of him too, right? Carlos. And he was the main guy, and you see him depicted. I thought I sent you a picture of. Yeah, I think you showed it earlier.
I only got
There are three. There should be another one. You see the original email I sent you. Well, go ahead and take a look. But here's our main guy, and he's portrayed by Johnny Depp, who, Johnny Depp looks rough too. You look at him now from 2021, and 25 years later, he's lived a rough life too himself. And I guess some of these actors, they get into living the life, so they got to do everything that their main character did to understand it, right? But this was, and Scott talked about powder versus rock, and this portrays it's 60s, 70s into the 80s. This guy, George Hung, and trafficking in Los Angeles, first marijuana, which is the typical pathway for smugglers. A lot of them started with marijuana, maybe some heroin, getting it over the border. And he had a network. He went directly to Mexico. It shows that, and he had a drug network going on. He was ultimately arrested for trafficking of marijuana, and it says that he met Carlos Later, a Medellin drug smuggler, cocaine, in federal prison, which is probably not unusual. They say prison is a place where crooks go to get smarter about being crooks. And
he mentions that in the movie.
Yeah. And then he starts once he gets out, they start smuggling cocaine, which is much more lucrative than marijuana. But what Scott was talking about is prior to them rocking it up, which I think was just a marketing strategy and a ease of transportation strategy for street dealers. Everything was powder cocaine. So I started working the streets in '85. It was all powder. I didn't see any rock until a few years later. And then you start seeing rock, but we still saw a lot of powder up in Hollywood. And the thing about between powder and rock, and I think I've said this before in shows, powder, you snort it, and it's a particulate matter that goes into your lungs and then gets absorbed in your bloodstream, and you get the high, right? By smoking cocaine, it's now a gas, and that gas transitions much easier through your lungs and into your bloodstream much quicker and gives you a more intense high. I think I got that right. Would that be accurate, Scott? That's how
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah.
And the preferred method prior to rocking up was freebasing, and freebasing was where you would well, we saw what happened with freebasing with who's the famous comedian that lit himself
Richard
on?
Pryor.
Richard Pryor. Yeah, he freebased. I was working at a place before I got on the sheriff's department security, and one of the Doobie Brothers was freebasing in the hotel and made a lot of damage, burn marks on the furniture. I think, was it David Crosby? Is he? No, David Crosby. There's Carlos later.
Here's
Yeah,
Carlos.
there's Carlos. So, so he made the connections in jail, and he started. And so this is the story of his life. But let's start rolling the story now. We can't. We've changing the format here. We can't like do clips anymore because YouTube has tightened up its rules. I think unnecessarily. I think they just do this stuff to cut out smaller content producers. It's my opinion, because there's a lot of bigger content producers. I bet you they treat them a little differently.
Oh yeah.
So we'll just roll through this, and I'll talk about some of the scenes that we initially saw. So it basically opens up where they're looking at fields. I think this is I'm not sure if this is marijuana or cocaine the fields are looking at, because it doesn't clarify. I mean, it's about blow, but he does start his smuggling with marijuana, and we call it the gateway drug, right, Scott? Because marijuana, it's also a gateway for smugglers, I guess. You start smuggling marijuana, you get a good system set up, and cocaine smugglers get your number, and you start smuggling that stuff too for a cut of the action, which is kind of what happened here, right? So
yeah, it's a lot harder nowadays than it was back in those days.
Yeah, it was this was pre-Reagan, so people really didn't care. Nobody really was paying attention. This was, I guess we got to talk about it. In the U.S., we went through this free love and through drug things in the 60s and 70s, where this was much more, this was very permissible, right? Using particularly the wealthy and well-off doing this kind of stuff. Or what was the saying in the 60s? Something drop in, drop out, whatever. Light up and drop out or something like that. And so it was permissive, and we came out of I don't want to say the 50s where everything was more structured, but that's kind of what happened. And it took us probably 20 years before we recognized the damage it was doing to our country, and we tightened it up.
But I think it started with Reagan, right? Didn't Reagan start the war on drugs because Nancy was anti-drug? So
yeah, I think so. I think he tightened it up. It became a political issue, and then progressive administrations got tougher and tougher, including, the Clinton administration. And then they went full circle, and when Hillary was running, they just ignored it. But here he is allegedly as a kid in his hometown, just to show that he's like I said, this is a small town boy, and here's one of his buddies. Now they end up being the two that start the drug smuggling in Los Angeles, and we'll see that in a little bit. But yeah, hey, and here's the thing: their drug smuggling business. They went from I want to say was it Missouri? Missouri, yeah, I think it wasn't it Missouri, the state that they were in, and then they went to L.A. Him and his buddy.
They lived in Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts, that's right. It was one of those M states, and then they went to L.A. and of course L.A. was the land of permissiveness, and started their drug business. I just love when they do these old cars.
Yeah.
And my buddy, his barn burned down. He had a 49 restored Dodge, and his barn that he had stored in burned down, and it destroyed it. He also had a vet in there that he was working on, but I just love the old cars because it just reminds me of home. So, and here's the other thing about the show. This show, it stars Johnny Depp, Penelope Cruz, but Ray Liotta here. I had forgotten. I had seen this movie years ago, and he's more of a supporting character, Ray here. But I think he did a pretty good job in the movie. What do you think, Scott?
Oh, he's one of my, was one of my favorite actors. I think he does, every movie I've ever seen him in, he does a really good job. So I was surprised because when you read the credits and who's in it, they don't really mention Ray Liotta.
No, they don't.
And then to find out that Dennis Leary, the comedian, is one of the producers.
Yeah.
And it's like, nobody seemed to mention any of that in the credits.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize that Penelope Cruz. I remember Johnny Depp in the movie. Maybe Penelope blew up in terms of fame after this, but well, and now the big guy in this movie. Now he was in We the Titans. The football, and that's where I recognize him from, right? And
me too. Yeah.
And now he lost a ton of weight. He lost a ton of weight, and now he looks nothing like what he is now.
Oh no.
And he talked about it. He says, "Yeah, I lost the weight. I stopped getting parts because that was his character role was that, right? But he's said, I'd rather be healthy and work less in Hollywood than be heavy. But this is the beach. I want to say they were in Newport, right? Which is even back then it would have been the it place to be in the 60s and 70s, beyond just Hollywood. Have you been to Los Angeles, Martin?
No.
No. Okay, so this is Orange County. It's south of Los Angeles, and it is very exclusive, very rich, very wealthy area. And they have a little peninsula that kind of jets out in the ocean, and so there's a lot of housing there. And you can't get anything there for probably less than $3 million. It's a very affluent place, and most of that would just be a shack. But here's our guys living in a typical beach bungalow that they have in California. They're at the time. This is gone. If it's on Newport, it's now this huge McMansion. You still have some of these little bungalows in Venice or in Venice, California, but most of that stuff is gone. It's been redeveloped. And this shows his girlfriend. He had a love interest, and the thing about this movie is I don't know how much of this is true or exaggerated. So this is all the Johnny Depp's character, George Young's perspective, right? And remember, he's selling a book. He's a crook who's selling a book, so just trying to make some money. But and this was, I think, after her death, although she participated. Now, she was a stewardess, and she agreed. This is how crazy this got. She agreed to help. They decide once they get in the marijuana business in LA, they're making good money. So they visit, or somebody from Massachusetts visits, and they decide to expand their network nationally. And this is how this stuff works, right? It's just the idea comes, but she's a stewardess, and she starts carrying it in her bag, which is not checked by, well, they don't have TSA back then, not checked by security, probably not checked by anybody at all, because they probably didn't have that much at all. Flying in the early 80s, I do remember them having some security at the baggage claim, but it was mostly just so people didn't steal bags. It wasn't to check anything. I don't remember any checking.
No.
But she started carrying dope to Massachusetts in her 2 pounds, whatever a week, whatever her flight was, and they were making money, and they were working with a local nightclub owner as well. So I don't know. That's when I was working in Hollywood, the dope was always related to the clubs. Somebody was always slinging it. It was always undercover. I mean, we had the Starwood with the whole. We did the movie with John Holmes in it. It was Wonderland, the Wonderland Murders. Yeah. That person, Johnny Nash, owned the Starwood, and they were dealing like crazy out of that place. So it's not unusual to have the nightclubs that are the center for dealing the stuff under the table, so to speak. But as this appetite grows, we see he makes a connection in Mexico, and ultimately, as the movie goes on, he makes more connections in Central and South America and starts shipping stuff up, which benefits the economies down in Central and South America. Martin, when you were still living in Venezuela, did you see the narco millionaires run around? You saw that, was it prevalent? there was the smuggling prevalent at the time? Had that become a mode of investment for a lot of wealthy people in Venezuela when you were still there, Martin?
Well, probably. I mean, drugs are been present in the whole world, just like you see here from the late 70s, and the boom was in the 80s. Uh, you always suspect. I say, oh, these people make a ton of money really quick, but you don't have the. And because they were fronts, I mean, the guys who were doing the real dough were Kowar and his cohort, people like him, and yeah, you have corruption, especially in police.
Mhm.
They, because they were being paid off to look to the other side, or maybe there were some of them were participating. You never know, but man, when I think the problem got big in South America, really big, not big because not
Mhm.
that it wasn't big, but was when the FARC began to use mm, narcotics money at first to get weaponry
Mhm.
for the guerrillas against the government, but then they understood, oh, why fight?
Just to get rich.
Yeah,
Right.
and of course Chavez had a close relationship with the FARC, and that is when it began for us as an institutionalized thing that was a secret, but everybody knew, and the officials may deny everything, but we knew
Yeah.
because and that's the thing. We're a very small country. We're smaller than one of your states, so everybody always know everybody, anybody,
Right.
and everybody knew what everybody was doing. The thing is, you cannot talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, you can, but you won't be doing so for long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think just to clarify the audience, Martina's home state or home country is Venezuela, which is adjacent to Colombia, which is
Yep.
central to the story here. And the FARC operated in Colombia, right,
Hmm.
and Venezuela. And what he's talking, the FARC is socialist, right? I believe they're a communist, socialist, Marxist terrorists that wanted to take down the government. And so they used cocaine to fund their resistance, but which means they partnered with narco militias, right? Narco
No, they
militias.
became narco
They
militias.
became narco militias. Well, I mean, we had we're talking about Medellin, so this was because Medellin and Cali were the two big
Yeah.
sources that I remember when I was working. And Medellin was, I don't want to say it was controlled by Pablo Escobar, but he was the most um, um,
No, it
visible,
was.
and um, and he was the kingpin in that area. I'm just curious, as were there other dealers and that worked with him, but he was the big name, and he used explosions and everything else to control explosions, assassinations to control everything down there as this exploded, right? And there was we saw in like the Miami Vice era where the money was coming up through the Caribbean, and they do talk about this. Carlos Slater sets up an island and starts shipping stuff through the Caribbean. We see the boats that are getting exploded, that are being targeted by the U.S. right now. That was coming, well, not until recently, until they got Maduro, and And then these pathways changed. They were using, as we're going to see, planes here, and they were coming more across the California border or the southern border of Mexico, and a lot of these smuggling shifted to Mexico and the traditional smuggling routes that Mexico have. And you kind of see this laying out here. Here he is. He's making a deal for marijuana, I believe. He goes down. Yeah. He goes down to Mexico, and just and just cold. He's looking for somebody. That's pretty dangerous, don't you think, Scott? It's just going down and asking. I go, this is really hard to believe because they're all down there asking. This would make him a target, but it works out for him. Here's our marijuana grower. But I thought that was pretty dangerous. They just go down and start asking and looking for contacts so they can start smuggling marijuana. What'd you think of that part of the movie?
I thought that was. I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
You know, whenever Hollywood says based on a true story, you got to remember that probably 90% of it's the names that are the same, but everything else has been changed. I think that's in Mexico. I don't believe that happened. I don't.
They should stop saying based and start using inspired.
Yeah. There you go.
Exactly.
Or suggested.
Yeah, lightly suggested. Yeah, I don't think you walk up and down a busy street in Mexico yelling that you want marijuana.
Yeah.
No. Well, you never know. Those were other times, my friend. It was the 70s. People were crazy down back then.
But right. I thought that was unrealistic. So it was, I guess, probably the best way to say it. And but he does allegedly successfully make the connection. But here's the interesting thing: they didn't steal a plane to do the smuggling, right? Which, you know, there are theft of small planes, but you have to have a pilot. Yeah, there's all this stuff that you have to have in place to do this. And I think the thing is this is the small town boy who puts it all together. I think one of the parts of the themes is his dad, Ray Liotta. Hey, you can be anything. I can trust you to do anything. You're smart enough to do anything. And he goes in the drug smuggling business. And obviously that disappoints Dad, who is blue collar, salt of the earth kind of guy, and clearly loves his son, as you see through the movie, but is disappointed in his choices. I don't know. And Mom is kind of a little wacky. She likes the money, but she's doesn't like the stigma. So it's kind of a contrast.
The dad was suspected. The mother wasn't. She
wasn't going to win an award.
The money, so she denied. She was in denial. No, he's just doing construction work. Let him be. When it became apparent, oh my!
Yeah. She knew.
She didn't like it at all.
Yeah, she just turned a blind eye to it and enjoyed the money. And but the dad knew. Okay, you ain't making money off construction like this. You know, there's no way.
Oh, I did hundreds and thousands of entries or search warrants over my time, and every time you go in and bust one of these gang members who's selling dope and everything, the mom's like, I didn't know he was doing it. Really? He's standing on your front porch. Guys come off the street. You see him make an exchange. He's got a shoebox that's full of money in his closet, and you don't know anything about it. You're surprised.
Never underestimate the power of self-delusion of a parent.
My son would never do that. Oh, really? He doesn't work, but he's got a shoebox full of $20 bills.
Yeah, so Mom was in denial, enjoying the money, but in denial, and Dad, salt of the earth Dad. That's why
Very common.
And I don't want to say he accepted it because I think he always wanted his son.
No, there's a moment in which George says to the father, "I'm good at what I do." Say, you could have been good at anything, kid.
Yes. You chose a path. And
I don't like what you do, but I love you.
Right. That's exactly right. And the other thing about this is, what the part we don't talk about is how many people lived a life of addiction or were died in this trade. They kind of glorify
Yeah.
George here in the whole movie, and uh, and they do show the seedy side of it. They do show that there's no honor amongst thieves. They do show that they're throughout the movie they're trying to cut George out, right, as he makes his connections. What's your connection, right? Um, so they show all that part, but they kind of portray him as, I don't know, almost heroic. Scott, what do you think? And I think that's a terrible portrayal because he's
Yeah,
talking about himself. But go ahead.
to me, there's only one really redeeming a character with redeeming qualities, and that was his dad, Ray Liotta.
Yeah,
Everybody else was. The mom was a horrible mom. She used to leave all the time, and
Yeah.
and then all his friends they're only his friends because of, well, Tuna was his best friend, but then in the movie he says, he stayed in Mexico and I don't ever know what happened to him. So everybody else is they're all just leeches off of each other. I mean, it's not friendship so I don't know why he was, throughout the movie he's surprised when these guys go to backstab him or cut him out or whatever, because there's no honor among thieves.
Well, no, at the end, in the last boss, he wasn't surprised at all. He was, okay.
Right. Finally, he realizes that nobody was on, it's sad, but yeah, they try to betray him as some like hero type, and it's not. I mean, these guys, like these fentanyl dealers. I mean, it kills people, but you're still willing to sell it and then act all surprised when you're going to jail for murder because somebody overdoses.
Yep. The thing about when I talk about him looking heroic and all that other junk, I remember, I know I've mentioned this story, but the first time somebody tried to kill me was two white cocaine dealers. I can remember it vividly. I didn't think of it at the time. We pull these guys over to Long Prairie Avenue, and when you get close to getting killed, you remember details. So, so it was nighttime. We pull these guys over. They're two white guys in a Datsun B210. We did the whole offset thing when you pull them over, light them up with the light so they can't see you, and I was on training. First time I approached the car by myself. In fact, my training officer said, "Hey, why don't you approach it? I want to see how you approach it safely, right?" And so I follow all the rules. I approach the car outside of the cone of light. So the lights are shining on them, the cone of lights, you stay out of that. It's harder for them to see you, right? So that's why you do that. And, it was, I approached the driver's or the passenger side door, and it was odd. They were both looking out the driver's door window intensely, which is not typical, right? I mean, I'd only been out there a few weeks, but plus I'd been pulled over myself. It's just not typical. People are looking forward. They're kind of waiting, they're not intensely looking for the driver's door. And I thought that was the oddest thing. And so I hit him with my flashlight and said, "Let me see your hands." And then the passenger dropped a Browning automatic, right? So they were waiting.
Oh.
So what was happening is most of the cars that were on the streets at West Hollywood at the time were one-person cars. I was in a two-person car because it was in a training car. So they were waiting for the deputy to come up on the driver's door window, and the guy was going to shoot whoever came, and then they were going to take off, right? That's what ultimately looked like what was happening. But when I came up on the passenger side and they didn't see me, there was no way the guy could swing around and get a beat on me. So he just dropped the Brown and gave up, and they had an 8-ball of Coke in the back. They're both a couple of white dudes, all sucked up, had been using for a long time. So they weren't thinking clearly as they're trying to execute a cop over an 8-ball of Coke. But yeah, so you don't, how many of those situations occurred? How many people got shot at because of the cocaine trade? So when I say they project this guy as a hero, there is nothing heroic about the cocaine trade. Nothing. He may have had a lot of fun doing it, made a lot of money doing it, but a lot of people suffered because of it. I guess that's my point when I say it. That's kind of how I see it. Scott, what do you think?
Well, exactly. Like, I watch these. I don't watch them, but every once in a while, it's like On Patrol Live and all these, real cop shows, where they out there filming them doing their, and I see the tactics that are used, and I just want to scream. I never, ever walked up to somebody's driver's side or passenger side window and stood there right in front of them, or leaned my head in to talk to them. I don't understand who's training these people anymore. It's like, I mean, when I approached, my gun was out. I had it at my side. I had my flashlight in the hand. I came up, like you said, I'm in the darkness. All they can see is these bright white lights everywhere they look. They're mirrors. And then I'm stopped at the passenger window and talk to him from there, because if he tries to shoot me, he's got to turn all the way around in his seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I already have my gun out, so it's just a quick bang, and I'm done, and it's over. So,
yeah. I look back at that. Well, I'm using this as commentary that the cocaine trade is a dangerous trade, right? And that I experienced firsthand, right? But I do credit the fact that I followed all the rules that I learned, right? Approaching outside of the cone of light, trying not to be detected as you approach, really being observant about how the people were acting. And that would be odd, right? If you approach two guys and they're looking intently out the front door, out the driver's door window, that's unusual.
Right.
And those are the things you got to key on. But I bring that story up because these guys were clearly addicts who were selling coke to support their habit, and they were whacked out. They weren't thinking right.
Well, look at, like you said, all the cops that are killed behind dope.
Yeah.
All the federal agents,
Yep.
DEA, and all these guys that were, murdered so somebody can make a shit ton of money and everybody works like slaves.
Yeah.
Just look at all the murders in the rough neighborhoods of each city.
Yeah.
Like, the Bloods and Crips, okay, it may have started out as a war over colors, which in my book is total BS. It was all about the drug trade, who could control what streets, and it wasn't uncommon for me 1 week be investigating a guy who's supposedly a Blood for doing something, and then 2 weeks later, now he's a Crip because he's got great dope sales over here. Now the Crips want him, so they get him. Even whether it's under the threat of murder or whatever, now he's dealing dope for the Crips. So the Crips and Bloods, to me, ended up just being over dope. Who controlled what streets? Yeah. It wasn't about we're Bloods and you're Crips. It was all about dope and money. Look at all the shootings in the rap industry. Tupac, Biggie's, all that stuff was over money. That's what it was over.
Yep.
And it's like, and it's all comes from the drug trade. It's all intermingled, and it's who controls the most money, who's control of everything. It's so this whole making him out like, he was just this good kid from a neighborhood in Boston who now is selling dope, and he's got the whole, some big drug kingpin in the United States, and we're going to kind of glorify it. But I think at the end of the movie is where they start to show that it
the
ends
cost
badly.
Yeah, but that was just the cost for him, right?
Right.
And I guess I'm trying to get at the cost. Well, Martine can talk about the cost of a narco state and how it impacts your whole country, right? There was more going on in Venezuela than narcotics, but when that becomes one of your number one GDP items, it kills a country, right? And we saw that with Colombia, and we saw that with Venezuela, we saw that with Nicaragua as well. So it isn't just I
wouldn't call it a GDP item. Because the guys doing it were the only ones wallowing in the money. Nobody else was. In fact, people were getting shot on the streets. So no.
The money did flow to the country. So, but
it's a very private industry.
But it has a very detrimental impact when it becomes when I say a big part of their GDP, it becomes a big part of the economy, whether because money does flow ultimately through those people into the banks in the country, and then they can use that to do legitimate stuff, or try to do legitimate stuff. But there's what I guess the point I'm getting at, and we talked to Scott about the street level problems, but this trade undermined governments, right, and countries and people in Central and South America, I guess is the point. So it's not we got this heroic guy who's building his drug network, and he is, during the movie, he's, to some degree, you're sympathetic to him, right? But he's a drug dealer, and he's big, and he lives like this while other people are suffering because of what he's doing. I guess that's my point. The one thing they do show in this is he was a user of his product, and we saw that at the pictures. How he aged. He didn't age well, right?
No.
And that was a big part of, like I said, with the two dope dealers that I'm talking about, they were using their product. They're all sucked up, and they weren't thinking right. Probably taking way more risks than they should have for just over 8 ball of coke. But he was also a big user, and his wife was a user of her product. And we what's that? Tony Montana in that movie was a big user of his product as well. But I'm just saying that this has a detrimental impact at all levels in a society, and it corrupts countries. I guess that's what I'm getting at, Martine. What do you think about that? Martine, huh?
I'm sorry. I was attending other of my functions. What was the question?
I'm just saying that this hurt and disrupted countries in Central and South America, the cocaine trade. So presenting him as a sympathetic character, and this is almost a heroic endeavor, ignores that. That's the part you kind of ignore in this movie. You see, at the end he suffers at the end, but there's a lot of people suffering along the way as he does his trade at all levels in society.
I don't see if they portray him heroically. I seen it even worse. I see that they portray him. He's like you.
Sympathetic, yes.
So, in my opinion, that is even worse than portray him as a hero, because a hero is somebody that very few people can be. But this kind of portrayal, it says, if you do it, it won't be wrong, because it is not wrong. Look how he says he's just a guy who's carrying plants through imaginary lines. That's how he sees himself. He sees himself like a businessman, like somebody who is appeasing the masses, giving them what they want. That is, in my eyes, that is even worse, because it makes it normal.
Right.
I like the judge when the first time he got busted, started going on his little rant. And I crossed some imaginary line, and then she's listening to him and he's thinking, "Oh, she's going to go my way," and then she's like, "No, you crossed a hard line." It wasn't imaginary. It was
unfortunately the lines were real and the plans were illegal. So
and but he only did a couple of years, or as I recall. And did you see the one scene where he's teaching the inmates, and he says, "Well, I'll teach you. How about you guys do me a favor and focus on getting better grades, and I'll teach you how to smuggle dope." And that was what he said to get them to go along in prison. But so prisons do become a way to exchange information. John, the Mercury News was the one that broke the story that the CIA was flying guns down to the Contra and bringing back cocaine. And the person who broke that story never really could show the detail behind it. I'm not convinced that they actually have proven that is true. That's a lot of conjecture. I don't know, Scott, what do you think about that? I've not seen, and I believe we would have seen a lot more people stepping up and talking about. And it's a big conspiracy if they were transmitting guns down to Contras and bringing cocaine back to the communities. I think that is a legend, a myth, I guess, not a legend, but a myth that in my mind has not been proven out by facts. I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, I remember when it was they were bringing the drugs back, so and giving it to black drug dealers in the inner cities for the crack cocaine.
That's the
But
story.
I've never found anything that other than that article and other people that basically took that article and tried to make a conspiracy theory out of it. But there's never been any concrete proof that was what the CIA was doing. And anymore, it's like anytime there's something bad going on in the world, somehow the United States government and the CIA's got some kind of hand in it.
Yeah.
It's like there's really no proof other than what was brought up in the original article, and then other people that kind of tried to expound on it but basically it's conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I remember years later that the author of that article was discredited. That he could not prove his sources, he could not show sources, and it was more fantasy. But that has captured the imagination, or it's justified. Well, why should we do that? The government was involved. No, the government, does not. If you want to say bankers were involved, I can be there because they were laundering money everywhere, and that there were some institutions involved that beyond the street level that needed to be dealt with more aggressively. I'm there with you, but this, the connection saying that it was the CIA that was bringing it back on CIA planes. I don't think that's if that was the case, why is this guy going into business with planes? Because his big thing, our main character he started flying loads in on aircrafts. So I just never, so thanks for the comment. I just don't believe that has ever proven to be true. I forget the name of the newspaper that broke that. It's one up in, I think it was Mercury News or something like that. It was up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which should also make it a suspicious story. I don't know, Martine, any idea that the CIA was involved in smuggling drugs in your mind?
I don't doubt it for a second.
You don't doubt it for a second? You know what? I can't. Here's the thing. I think as time goes on, more information comes out, and more information just did not come out. So,
yeah, if your witness then disappear, well,
no, it's if people are actually organizing it and doing it, why would it not eventually come out? 20 or well, because we're talking
40 years ago.
Because
40 years
CIA, the central node of all intelligence operations.
Yeah,
like I said, most of the guns in third world countries are AK-47. So you'd have the CIA buying guns from the Russians or China.
Yeah,
I don't doubt it for a second.
Well, you say you don't doubt it for a second. You think it's more possible than not.
I'm not saying.
But is there any evidence to indicate that it's true?
I'm not saying it is stone written true. I'm just saying I don't doubt it.
You think the intent could be there if that's what they wanted to do, right?
Do you think they may have? Yes, they may have. Do you think they did it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe now that I think about it, I might have to side with Martine on this.
Yeah, for me, I need evidence. I need evidence.
Well, I need evidence too, but if sometimes
here's my problem with the guy who wrote the article, right? Okay, what are these journalists supposed to have? They're supposed to have sources, and he couldn't produce the sources. And when you can't produce the sources, if it's just, I heard this rumor, and you decided to build it up into a story, and you can't produce the sources. But if the story is true, then eventually those sources will come forward, particularly since he broke the ice. But he was never been able. Because here I've been working with some local reporters. They do an article, and more people start calling. Yeah, they do an investigative article, and then more and more people start calling because they want, I got more information. Let me help you out. But that didn't happen with that. But and the suggestion, the CIA went and shut all those sources down. I don't know. I don't see it happen. Hey, we're halfway through our show, Martine. Are we going to do the halfway mark? Freeze this, and then we come back. Are we going to do that?
Well, Pat, didn't we give guns to? Didn't the Obama administration give guns to the cartels? It was
Yeah,
supposed
Fast
to
and
be
Furious,
what-
or was it Fast and Furious? I think was the name of the dumb program. We'll talk about that when we come back from the break. The Fast and Furious stupid program by the Obama administration. And who was this moron that was an attorney general? I can't think of him right now, but we can talk about that in just a minute. Martin?
Yes, let's go.
There's only one location on the internet where you can get it all: movie, TV, and comic industry. News and rumor analysis. Official scoops from Geekosity magazine. Reviews and interviews. So, when you need it to be Sunday, there's only one place to go, mate. Pop Culture Minefield. Well, they're always talking nerd stuff. Right, jog on then. There's only one location on the internet where you can get it all: movie, TV, and comic industry. News and rumor analysis. Official scoops from Geekosity magazine. Reviews and interviews. So, when you need it to be Sunday, there's only one place to go, mate. Pop Culture Minefield. Well, they're always talking nerd stuff. Right, jog on then.
Yeah, hey, we're back on Morning Coffee with the Chief. We're going over the movie Blow with our guest, Scott Orr and Martine. And so, yeah, Fast and Furious. It was Eric Holder. I had to remember that name as I was. And he was the attorney general. And Fast and Furious was they would ship guns down, and the goal was to trace them, which was I'm still trying to figure out what they hope to get out of that. So that they
Money.
can, I guess. Well, to see the pathways of where the guns. I'm trying to think of it from a law enforcement perspective. Okay, how was I going to gain on this? So I ship guns down there. I work with Mexico, is corrupt, and then they're supposed to tell me when they seize the guns and where the guns went, so I can understand the pathways for the guns that are coming from. That's the only thing I can think of, Scott. But to me, that was a badly thought out plan because you're shipping guns down there. What intelligence?
It's either a bad plan or an excuse.
Yeah, well, I can understand that one, Martin.
I tend to think it was an excuse, a front to tell. Oh, we did this because we wanted that, and say that makes no sense. Oh, at the moment it did.
You mean Saint Obama did that? I can't believe that Saint Obama and his disciple Eric Holder did something evil like that. It's hard for me to believe. But I am trying to think of it from an actual, what am I trying to accomplish as a cop thing? And I'm still lost, Scott. I mean, okay, I'm not, I'm not in the brain trust and the DOJ, but I'm still trying to understand what they're trying to get out of that. Learning the pathways of drug smuggling in Mexico. That's the only thing I could think of, but they never got that kind of data, to my knowledge.
No.
I mean, what do you think?
Well, you worked with me. You know I'd be the one in the room going, we're going to do what? And why?
Yeah, I think we both would.
Yeah, I would have been like, wait, so we're going to give guns to the bad guys in hopes that they're used to kill somebody so the Mexican government can tell us who's using them?
Yeah.
Dude, that is like that Stallone movie, the
That's a
Demolition
movie
Man.
in
When
itself. That's
the
like one
cops
of
in the
those.
future say, "How? Where is the Perby? Okay, I had a plan. Let's wait till he kills somebody else, and we will know."
It's so
Stallone, what?
Larry Moe and Curly came up with that
Yeah, I
plan.
don't
think.
know who. But again, everybody. It's funny, I look at people in general because that's kind of my, I watch people and I've listened to people for how many years, and so I don't. It's hard to. It's people's thought process, but people, but the general public thinks that politicians are smart, and they're not. They just can lie better than everybody else, and they think that actors and actresses have something important to say, and it's like, why do you listen to these people? So you're in this room with all these brain trusts for whatever president, doesn't even matter who. Because same with Nixon and Watergate. You're going to do what? You're going to break in it. You're going to burglar what? So you have this brain trust that tells you that, hey, if we give guns to the cartels in Mexico, they're going to use them, which they're going to use it to kill cops, people on the street, whatever. And then we're going to find out where they're going and who's using them.
Yep.
And everybody nodded their head like that was a good idea. What's that called? Groupthink?
Dude,
Where everybody just
that
goes, yeah,
sounds
good
like
idea.
that sounds
I mean,
like when you're 22 and are drunk with your friends, and someone gets with that brilliant idea.
Yeah, hold my beer moment.
Yeah, and everybody say, yeah, let's do
that. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think that only really exploded after one of the guns was used to kill a federal agent in Mexico.
Right.
And then it came out because Congress looked at it, and that came out, and then Eric Holder refused to release any data the entire time he was the Attorney General, and they should have prosecuted him for obstruction of Congress. But hey, Saint Obama made a mistake. And here's where I was talking about where they he negotiates. He has his relationship with Carlos later. He does go down to Medellin and meet Pablo Escobar in the movie. Whether that's true or not, he definitely had a system. He does find a little chica down there that he ends up marrying, right, as well. So he's in life and he's partying and having a good time. And he parks his money in Panama, which was at the time, it was considered a safe place for dope dealers, not just him, to park their money. I imagine the bigger names who had bigger money didn't have their money expropriated because they had ways of getting at Noriega. But this guy, little small fry with just, I think it's 30 million he dropped down there.
60, I think.
60? Yeah, that's
okay. He
opened up with 30 million, then he added more, right? Or something like that. I think it was the initial deposit was $30 million. And then when he went to get it after his life was falling apart, he didn't get it. But the interesting part, I think, of this is, so his value to the organization was he had a network in California to distribute it onto the streets. So, and that's what his value to them. So I don't want to say he was a mid-level dealer because he could smuggle it down there, but he had a network that can distribute it. And they showed in the movie that he distributed, I forget how many kilos of coke within 3 days or something like that, right? Because he had connections to the people who had money, and that's an important thing to talk about. Cocaine used to be a rich man's drug, right, Scott? It was.
I started making crack, and that exploded it.
Yeah, it made him an every person's drug, and because when they changed it up in its format and made it easier to ingest and to ingest via smoke, it made it, you could get a really good high for $10, not by experience. I'm just myself, but this is what I've been told.
Whereas it's usually $10 or even you could even get a small little chip for $5.
Right. And so and that's little rocks are easier to carry than powder, right? Because powder you had to put in a bindle or a vial, which is how I usually arrested people on the streets with it. And but you didn't the high. If you took the same amount of cocaine that you rocked up and smoked versus the cocaine that you snorted, you're going to get a better high when you smoke it, right? That's what I was getting at. So rocking up made it every bit, but in the movie here, it's his wealthy network that still are snorting the coke primarily that he's distributing through, right? So it's like, so this network is big, but when they rock it up, times that times 10 is what happened when it exploded, right? That's kind of what I'm talking about. But he had the distribution network, and the interesting thing in the movie is they constantly try to undermine his connection with that. They want to deal direct. They want to cut out the middleman. He's the middleman.
Right.
Johnny Depp is the middleman in this thing, and so as I think, was it you that said it, or Martine that says, yeah, these guys were fair weather friends as long as you're able to distribute their coke, but if they can cut you out, they're going to cut you out.
Well, the sad thing is when he meets Pablo Escobar, and they execute that guy when they first pull up.
Right.
You can tell when he's talking to Pablo Escobar that if he says he doesn't need his partner,
that partner's gone. Yeah.
He's going to execute him until he said, if he can't be a part of it, then I don't want to be part of it. So he actually saved his partner's life, because if he would have said, no, I don't need him, he would have been executed.
Yep.
So he at least is trying to be loyal to his friends. Little does he know that they're all trying. The whole reason why he wants the name of his dealer, and a lot of people probably don't know, but that was what was his name?
The actor?
He had the TV show. He was the one caught in the adult movie theater.
Oh, Pee Wee Herman? No, it's not Pee Wee.
Pee Wee Herman. That's Pee Wee Herman, is the gay drug dealer.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. That's Pee Wee Herman.
Oh, I did not know that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't catch that. Is that Paul Rubens? Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah. Paul Rubens. Yeah.
See? That says it was also by Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Oh, here we go. I love all these cars. So he's talking.
Yeah.
We're talking with his dad.
Yeah.
I would probably stop talking to him and go, let's go for a spin in this. Let's go for a spin in that. I'd want to go out in the cars. But
as soon as he gave up Paul Rubens, that's where they didn't need him anymore.
Right, and he kind of set him up in that dope deal. It shows that he gets shot, right, and then he just gives the name up because the guy's acting squirrely, and I think this is the scene where it gets shot, and he ends up giving the name, and then he gets cut out. But this happens a couple times in the movie, and when you get cut out, you're also in danger then at this point. So the fact that he was able to build a network, and I did do the research, even though they say his claims were overblown in terms of how important he was in cocaine with Escobar to the United States. He did, after he severed his relationship with Carlos later, because the true story is that his relationship with him ended very quickly. It didn't go on for a long period of time, and later Carlos basically was the main man bringing it up from Medellin, but that he did have his own independent smuggling going on. So it wasn't like he wasn't in the life. He was definitely in the life, and it is dangerous once your connect is identified. There's no use for you. Let's just get rid of you. But in this case, they let him stay alive, I guess. So I guess there's something he said about his own survival here.
Well, he did the honorable. Well, I don't want to say honorable, but he did to save his ass when they all got busted at his house. All the big drug dealers and everybody got busted at his house, and he said, "No, it was all mine. They didn't have any knowledge of it or anything like that."
Right. So
Then they all stabbed him in the back later. I mean, no honor among thieves, right?
Such thing.
The other thing is when he lost his clout and power, that impacted his relationship with his wife too, who no longer saw him as, right, you're supposed to fight back, right? That's kind of, you're supposed to fight these guys. It was she questioned his manhood and all this other stuff. So here he is. He's been shot now. He does give up his connect. But she's it devalue in her mind. He's now less valuable, and he's not the man that she married, I guess, and that has a big problem. So it's I suspect that's part of the culture, right? If you're on top, you got to stay on top, and when you're on, you're not on top. Why aren't you climbing to get back on top? Well, because it's pretty damn dangerous in this kind of business. It's one thing if you're, manufacturing widgets or something, but in the cocaine trade, that gets you killed, right? Just
Right, and she's only with him because of his money. You can
right,
tell that at the end. What are we
right.
going to do for money now? We're poor. All she's worried about is the money. She doesn't care about him going to jail or anything.
No, or getting killed trying to get the money, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's now the one actor in here. I can't remember where I saw. There's a lot of really good character actors here. When you the Latino character actors in here, but that I've seen him in other movies, and I didn't do the research to see what I saw him in, but there are a lot of great character actors in this movie, right, Martine? As we go through this, and I mean, Ray Liotta wasn't, in my mind, he wasn't a character actor in this thing. He was just he was a supporting actor. But they do have a lot of great character actors in the movie that you recognize, right, Martine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ask me for the names.
Yeah, I know. It's like I know, I remember him, and I remember that guy too.
Dude, the casting for Escobar, that guy, his face looked like a young Escobar.
Yeah,
A little more browner than the original item, and a little more taller, but it was a good cast.
He was trimmer than the real Pablo, right? Pablo was kind of heavier, right? So
yeah,
they got it. Pablo. It was played by Cliff Curtis. Oh yeah, we've seen him in other movies. Cliff, he's
he almost always plays cops.
Yeah, he's not quite a star, but he's maybe a second tier kind of guy. But yeah, he's got a good pedigree here, and True Spirit. I'm trying to look at some of his Remembrance, Doctor Sleep, Fast and the Furious. So he's done some of those stuff. But anyways, I think everybody did a great job in the acting movie. I don't think it was as good as Scarface. I think Scarface was a caricature of a lot of the stuff going on there. I think it was there was a lot of violence definitely going on in Miami at the time, a lot of corruption at the time. But that was we're talking about this being a loose adaptation. When you are talking about a real life story, if they're actually trying to just be to stick as close to the story as possible, it's constrained on what you could do, because Scarface was a fictional story about what was happening in Miami at the time, right? So there's a little difference. So true stories do constrain. If you want to stick to the boundaries of the true story, it's constrained, right? You can't get as you're not going to have a big shootout scene like you had at the end of Scarface when you have when you're going based upon a true story. So yeah, Scarface was entertaining, and it did talk about the trade going through Miami at the time, but it was a caricature of what was going on at the time. I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Did you agree with that?
Yeah, Scarface is just it's a made-up movie. It's a novel, so you can, like, a small army attacks a mansion in the middle of Miami, and not a single cop responds. Come on, machine gun fire. He's supposed to be on Star Island or whatever it is. You know how hard it is to get onto Star Island, let alone an armed militia coming to kill a guy. Come on. You can't compare that. I mean, they just showed the part where he goes to the island to confront his buddy, and again, I don't believe that part at all, because
you wouldn't have survived it.
They would have found his body riddled with bullet holes floating in the ocean.
Yes, exactly. The dad in this picture, we did talk about that, John, that Ray Liotta's loyalty to his son as the dad's loyalty. That was an important part of this, because I think what comes through, and this may be as he's writing his biography, when he writes his book and then the movie, is his recognition that although I had a great time doing it, although I was good at it, it wasn't. I could have done something better, and my dad he had faith in me. He had the faith in me that I guess I didn't have in himself, right? Because the thing about going a traditional route is you don't get to say I'm good at it. You're not good at it if you end up in prison and you lose 20 years of your life to prison. I mean, to me, that's not a testament of success. And no, right? It's harder to pick the path where you have to work harder for less reward, but at the end, you're better off, right? You get a better life, which is, I think, what his dad is trying to impart upon him. But
like when he tells him at the beginning when you're talking about the bankruptcy and how it was going to affect his mom and the dad's relationship, and he's like, remember, money isn't real.
Yeah, it's at
the end of the movie, he finally realizes it was absolutely correct.
Money's just a tool, right? A tool to get certain things done, and it's like having to buy more tools just to get your life. And but I don't know. I think people get captured. Plus, it's so these people get so materialistic, right? But it's not just these guys. I mean, we're talking about the fraud going on in Minneapolis. Billions of dollars stolen of government money, but then you look at what they spend it on: Ferraris, big houses, and at what point do you stop ripping off and just take your ill-gotten gains and go? But for me, it's I meant to say this at the beginning of the movie. This movie is about greed, right? Because that's what you see
greed.
Every step of the way. It's greed and hedonistic excess. That's what this movie is about. And you see this, okay, I'm not happy with tens of millions. I need hundreds of millions. And then I want to enjoy all of the hedonistic pleasures that money could buy, being them sexual or materialistic. That's what I see in this. And I kind of see when you look at, I was looking at the graph of some of the theft that was coming out of in Minnesota. So it starts small and it just spikes. They go from millions, tens of millions to billions in less than 10 years. And to me, that's just all greed. And that's what you see, I think, is what you see in the movie too. It's all about greed, getting more money and making more money, cutting out the middleman so you can increase your percentage of the profits, and then the hedonistic excess that comes with it. I think that is. I don't know. What do you think, Scott? You agree with all that?
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, if you look at just about every crime, from politicians down to low-level street dealers and low-level, it's all about money. It's all about greed, trying to get more without having to really put any work into anything, right? You get everybody else to do the work, you reap the benefits, and then you can't understand why they turn on you. I mean, governments are toppled for that reason. I mean, look at communism. Hey, wait a minute. The Politburo's rich and the rest of us are standing in line to get a half a loaf of bread for 6 hours. These guys are driving around in their limos, and we're standing they're driving the limos by as they're, like Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. Well, eventually the peasants are going to get pissed. And there's more peasants than rich. So eventually the tide turns.
But the other part of this is then the hedonistic excess.
Oh, like when they show all the cars.
Yeah.
I know personally, I can only drive one car at a time.
Yeah.
And all those expensive cars, I wouldn't want to take them on an LA freeway. I drove those freeways for years.
Yeah.
If you get hit and you're hitting a Rolls Royce, most people aren't stopping. You'll never see them again.
Yeah, Martine, excess, right? This leads to, I mean, to me, I look at what happened in Venezuela, where they nationalize these industries, and eventually everybody at the top, meaning the socialist architects of the mess there, their families, and the ones that helped keep them in power benefited, and everybody else got poor. That's what I saw. So greed begets more greed if there's no constraints, whether they're social constraints or they're legal constraints, right? And that's what you see that in the movie here too, right?
Yeah, but there's an inaccuracy there that I'm really getting tired of seeing on all the internet. Petroleum industry, the oil industry, wasn't nationalized by Chavez. That was nationalized in in 1978. What happened with the industry, uh, with your oil companies in the 20s, in the 2000s, it was even worse. The thing was that, uh, of course, in the hands of our illustrious socialist leader, our oil industry went to shit.
Did you say illustrious socialist leader?
Yeah, our oil industry went to shit, and there is no other way to put it.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Martin. What happened
So,
is they kicked out the U.S. technicians and companies that were helping.
oh, no. Hear me out, because it is worse than people think.
Uh-huh.
They made contracts with American companies that, let's form mixed industries. Uh,
Uh,
one part of the stock is our, one part of the stock is yours. You come here, you put your money, you make your installations, you make all the work, and we get royalties. You said, okay, sounds good. But then at some point, I don't know what Chavez poured into his coffee. He said, I'm going to take all of that. It wasn't an expropriation, because in an expropriation or a nationalization, you are bound to pay for all the assets. He didn't do that. He just seized them and kick everybody out. So that was theft.
That was theft. Yep.
It was not a nationalization. Was theft. It was worse. That is why when you see people say, hey, when Trump says, well, they own us 12 billion, I say, yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
undeniable. But it's not what people are saying, and it's a lack of information. And I think
Well,
it had
thanks for
to
the
do.
correction. But it is in terms of Chavez and then followed by Maduro. But it's agreed that that
Oh
top
yeah,
level crew. You
uh,
see
every,
that they became just like these narcotics cartels. It's just getting richer and richer and richer, cutting
exactly,
out the middleman.
Chief.
Because
Chief,
these guys
what do you
driving these
think
boats, they
motivated?
weren't making that much money. The guys driving the boats that are getting blown, they're not making a lot of money, right? Those
I
young
wouldn't
men.
know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. But I assume they had to be making some money if you're agreeing to do that. How much,
Mm.
I wouldn't know. But yeah, Chief, what do you think motivates any human being to seek for a position of power? Money.
I think,
It's always
I
money.
yeah, ambition. I think, yeah, I think that pushes it. Power. I think this comes down to values too. When you have values that constrain you, your hedonistic needs, that's an important thing that we are got rejected in society, and to some degree. And so people, it's okay because I'm not constrained by any uh, moral beliefs, right? It's one of the reasons why I think faith is important, but that we reject that. See, fame and public displays of fortune are always the downfall of organized crime. Yeah, you know what? You're right. I think, like when I told my story early on, um, those two sucked up dope dealers uh, were using their product and they weren't thinking right? So they were thinking about making money, and they were in the hedonistic lifestyle and they weren't thinking right. And I think as time goes on, when it's just about greed and you're willing to take greater and greater risk and then you live it and flaunt it, because I would say Pablo Escobar flaunted it. He wasn't quiet about it, right? And you become a target. I think we got to talk about Penelope Cruz. I want to of the four characters. If I had to pick the four characters that I thought the actors did a really good job, obviously Johnny Depp did a great job. Ray Liotta, we already talked about. I think his mom, she played a Bitch. She played. He's not a good person, but I
No,
think she was. That was a great. She did a great job being that person. And then I think Penelope Cruz. Those were the four. If I had to pick the four, those four actors did a really good job. I would say throughout the lifetime of George here. What do you think, Martine? That What do you think of the mom first? Let's go with her, and then talk about Penelope Cruz.
oh, you mean the actress or the character?
Well, the character, but the actress's job in portraying it, I think, is really what I'm trying to say. I think she did a great job. Your thoughts?
Well, I think too, with the accent, I wouldn't know because man, I am so bad with American accents, so I couldn't say, oh, that was a good impression of that specific regional accent. I don't know.
I'm saying, when you get a part, right? I would imagine. I mean, you get a part, and you're reading for a part, and you go, what part do you want? Do you want to be the bitch of a mom that she's portraying? Does that give you a chance to really, show your act? Because I think, sometimes when you look at these actors and actresses, and they get this, they have to portray this very complicated person. So in her case, she was, I would say, cold to George, and she had expectations that were unrealistic to George and her husband Ray, right?
Mm.
And that comes out pretty good. And she's, she clearly, as we said, she knew what was going on, but she didn't, unless it was in her face, she didn't care.
Yeah,
And then when it did come out, she tossed her son aside very coldly, right? Because you embarrassed the family. And I don't know. I think she did a good job as an actress, being a bitch. That's what I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And then Penelope Cruz, I think she did a great job too, showing this. She targeted him at that party,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
she's beautiful, and drew his eye. He knew she was connected. That's a dangerous thing when he's doing that, particularly. Uh, Her boyfriend was a Colombian, and she targeted him because he was the big American with money, and he could probably take her to America, and she can enjoy all the stuff there. But also, he had the money that she wanted, and she saw herself getting in that hedonistic lifestyle. And I think she's pregnant and she's snorting coke. I want, in addition to being a very beautiful woman, I think she played the part very well. I don't know. So
oh,
if you had, do you agree
that
with
she
that?
did.
That she did? Yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
With her, I wasn't very impressed because she pulled the Colombian accent flawlessly.
Did she? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and she's from Spain. She's not she's not Latin American. So kudos to her. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
But she also played her character was she portrayed that character very well, and as in my book, as it's all about the money, hedonistic stuff, wrapping up the American, using her sex appeal to get him. Risky game that she was playing, right? And but I think she did a good job. The four people that I think made the movie made it really interesting to me were, like I said, his mom. She played a pretty good bitch of a mom. The dad, Ray, Ray Liotta's character, and then Penelope Cruz and Depp. What do you think, Scott? What do you think of Cruz and Depp's mom in this movie?
I thought they did a really nice job. I mean, Penelope Cruz, pregnant, snorting coke, and then he says you shouldn't be doing that. She goes, "I gave up drinking, didn't I?" I mean, I mean, but then again, I was born in the '60s, and my mom smoked, and I'm sure she drank, and I turned out somewhat okay. I wouldn't say I'm normal, but I'm somewhat okay. So, I mean, I think anybody that's a product of the '50s and the '60s, and before they came out and said, "Oh no, alcohol's bad if you're pregnant," type thing, and smoking's bad if you're pregnant, type thing. But I mean, it's that mentality that she showed really well. That hey, I can snort cocaine because I gave up drinking. So they just the way, I guess how they, even with she's a gold digger, but even with the with the drug dealers. I mean, hey, I'm doing this, which is better than doing this, right? Kind of thing. And I thought she was great. I thought, I didn't know about her accent. I thought it was great. I knew she was from Spain, so I knew that wasn't. I've been to Spain, so I know what the accent sounds like compared to what it is in Mexico. But I didn't know Colombia had a. I guess each country's different, but and then the mom, like I said, she was not a redeeming character.
No.
She was taking his money, but then chastising him because it embarrassed her around her friends when he got arrested. So it didn't matter that, Ray Liotta's loyal to his son, and he's like, I understand what you're doing and I don't like it, but you're going to do it whether I tell you it's right or wrong. So I'm just telling you, I don't like it. Where the mom was, it's all about how she was embarrassed to all her friends in the neighborhood. So, but she was taking the money. Yeah, I got your money. Okay, but now you're going to chastise him for doing what he giving you money. So I thought she did a great part of playing that kind of a mother.
Yeah. Well, I think her constant materialism, because she played the materialistic wife too, right?
Right.
How can we,
right.
and
when he lost like they said, how many times did they at the beginning when she's leaving and getting on a bus and leaving him standing and sitting in the street? And it's like, so how great of a mom were you to begin with? Because every time he got low on money, you left.
Yes.
But he always took her back.
Yep. And we see we're at this point now where, part of this, he gets busted, right? And he gets out of the game for a while, but he wants to get back in, and he meets one of his friends who ends up betraying him to get back in, and they end up all getting busted, right? And he goes to jail for a long time. But leading up to this, they have a party, and somebody comments on Penelope Cruz, how she's gotten thinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we remember from the Scarface thing, same thing with Tony Montana's love interest, right? She's addicted to coke, and she's a beautiful gal. And what coke does to you, it's an essential nervous system stimulant, right? So you're going a lot longer, and it suppresses your appetite, right? And we've seen this guy with both cocaine and methamphetamine, meth being much worse, of course. And you get really skinny, because you're up a long time, you're not eating, and your body starts feeding on itself. And so you lose fat and muscle mass, and so you get really skinny. And so you see that in both movies, and it is referenced here. So that part of it, that's true. I mean, that's true for anybody who gets hooked on coke, and that's a big part of their life. But also, we've gone through the scene where she's kind of emasculated him. Where's the money coming from? How come you're not fighting for yourself? He's been cut off. His supplier's been taken away. And then he finds out that his money is in Panama is gone. And so he's got to get back in the life. And so he's tied his life to wealth and hedonistic stuff. And if he's not doing that, then he's not a man. That does come out in the movie. He believes that because his dad's trying to teach him otherwise. But what do you think of that, Martine? That's a big part of it. He's now tied his identity to wealth and the hedonistic behaviors that he was involved in. And that's what drives him at this point. And he can't break that to go in another direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he said, yeah, no. I mean, everybody can. I've seen people change their ways in the course of my life. He doesn't want to. That's it.
Yes.
And his excuse is, this is all I know. Dude, you can start anew. You just don't want to. And maybe what?
I was gonna just say with your point, this was an easy way for him. He already knew how to do all this stuff. So he didn't want to put in the effort, like you're saying, Martini, to do it right.
His identity, I don't know. What they're selling here is, he did it that last time because he was desperate to get his children back. He needed the money. There's always other ways. I don't know his intentions. His reality was only known to him if he wasn't self-deluded. That's the other one. Uh, but yeah, I think he was he wanted to follow the what he saw as the path of less resistance for him.
I think we got Gambit here made a comment that the movie got mixed reviews, but I want to emphasize that it was far from a credible mob thriller. Yeah, we got to talk about that. It's
Oh yeah, he doesn't. Gambit really doesn't like this movie. I I I don't steer it one way or another. I say ah, it's a movie. It exists. Um, I have seen worse. At least I didn't feel that I lost 2 hours of my life, which
no,
has happened.
Go see the SpongeBob movie. You'll with your grandkids. You'll waste 2 hours of your life. You'll never get them back.
watching what with your grandkids? SpongeBob?
SpongeBob movie. Oh my god.
Well, I think so. He's in prison now, and he's imagining his daughter coming to visit him. And this is one of the things that when I was doing running the jail, one of the jails, and then we had all this leftists kept saying, we need to make sure that these fathers can talk to their children, and because having them connect with their children is a good thing. And I'm thinking, God, do you know who we have housed here? Taking these people away from their children is probably a good idea, but they're of this fantasy that if phone calls were free from the inmates to home, they could have that fatherly connection. And let me say, there's a handful of inmates that I met were really trying to be good fathers, but most of them had girlfriends visiting them, not their moms. And when they were on the phone, they were calling some gal that they were hoping to hook up with when they got out. They weren't calling home to mama and the kids. Like I said, there were a
No.
handful. There were a handful that absolutely were, but the vast majority were just they were just gangsters in the life, and they weren't connecting with their kids. And then when you look at what they did and what they were in for, you don't want them connecting with their kids. I mean, but that's what the leftists will say. So but we do have this Johnny Depp imagining that he is connecting with his daughter that never really happened, and so this is. And it is he went from looking like a trim and fit George young to a old middle aged with a gut in the movie. I think Depp did that pretty good. I was thinking, oh yeah, he does look like a slob at the end here, right? Like he's not taking care of himself. But here's the question: was it worth it at the end? Because I think so. His last thing he wants to make more money, and so he can get money to allegedly pay spousal child support and have more time with his daughter. But then he gets arrested, right? And he implies that his biggest mistake in all of this was breaking that promise to his daughter that he would come home and spend more time with her. Is what the movie's all about. So at least they get that message across. But it's interesting. As he does this, he does it with one of his buddies that was part of his initial marijuana network from Massachusetts, and his buddy sets him up.
Well, yeah, because he's got to work off his crime. I mean, that's how it happens 99% of the time. I would arrest a gang member for a gun and then say, hey, who did this murder last week? Oh, I can't. Dude, I can get your sentence reduced if you help me out on a murder. Oh, it was so-and-so, him and so-and-so. Happened every day. So, and to me, I guess I've got a suspicious mind. If Dooley, the guy that first flew the plane, because he flew with his dad all the time, that's how he knew how to fly. That's the first pilot. He shows up out of the blue.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden wants to put a big drug deal together with you. My mind, I'd be having red flags going all over the place. Because you show up out of the blue, I haven't seen you in 20 years? And now you want to put together a drug deal. I don't know. I guess I'm too suspicious. But the one thing in this movie that drove me nuts was Johnny Depp's hair. Was that a wig or his hair? Is his hair that nasty looking?
I mean,
Let us hope it's a wig.
Yeah, because it looked like straw. It looks like it's plastic almost.
he clearly was trying to look like George, though, because you look at the picture of George we had. I don't know if you still got it, Martine. He looked awful, and so in the end, that's what Depp was going to. But yeah, you're right, Scott, and I think he should but he agreed. Like I said, greed overcomes those red flags, right?
Right.
Right. It's almost like a good-looking woman in sex. You're not thinking clearly because you're thinking in another way, right?
Yeah.
Your hedonistic desires come out, and in this case, it was for money and getting back on top. That's what I think this was about. And I think it's the other thing that we need to talk about. So his buddy Dooley, shows up, but the feds, when they know you've been transporting heavyweight and they don't have a good case on you yet, they know they're going to work it, right? They're going to work it, and they know how to stay out of it being entrapment, right? They know how to do that. They know how to set it up so that you're the one who's because entrapment is somebody suggests the crime to you and you go along. What the feds will do is they'll set it up so that you suggest it to somebody else. You do the overt acts, and as soon as you do the overt acts, you then have the conspiracy, and then they just worked the conspiracy all the way through to the plan for smuggling right before they took him down, right? So, but they don't forget. If you're a heavyweight guy and they haven't gotten you yet, they will continue to right. You worked with the feds before. They're going to target you. They're going to find another way to get you if they can. Right. And they're gonna...
I mean, we had that gang task force with the feds for years down in Compton. And it'd be like, dude, we used to joke that they move like molasses in a Vermont winter. Where we're like, hey, let's do the search warrant, bang, 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 get them all in custody, and then we'll work it from there. We'll start with the low-level guys and work it all the way up till we get the information that we want. Not them. They'll just methodically and slowly until they have this case. And the funny thing about them is they have to run the case as they're doing it by an attorney general, or assistant attorney general. And that attorney general or the assistant will tell them, go ahead and make the arrest. And it's like, because we were going to do one of their search warrants, and we're looking for a gun used in a double homicide. And I found out the reason why they like to have local cops on these task forces is because I can walk into a judge that I've worked with many a times and go, here, can you sign this? And he'll read through it and make sure everything's done right, and then he'll sign it. I'm out the door in 45 minutes with a search warrant we can go serve immediately. With them, it's got to go all the way up the chain. It's got to be approved by the Department of Justice, then all the way back down to them, which could take 3 weeks. So,
but that doesn't mean they're still persistent though. Once they target somebody,
they got their sights honed in. Like, look at the success rate of prosecutions.
Yes. Like 99%.
It's like 90-something%.
Yeah. It's like it's almost 100%. It's very rare.
Because they will methodically, and just when I tell the wife that if the feds got a hold of you, you're going to jail. They're not going to arrest you unless they got a solid case.
Yeah, when the Diddy trial was going on, I was surprised at how many acquittals charges that he quit, but I knew they were going to get him on something. They wouldn't have brought that case if they knew they weren't going to get a conviction, and they got a conviction. But I also once they target you, they don't like losing, so they're going to keep targeting you again. And it's almost like with John Gotti, right? So they kept going after him until they actually made it stick, right? The Teflon Don is Teflon Don no more, as they were said. All the charges stuck. I think that's what the DA, the prosecutor said when he came out of that courthouse. They were going to get him, right? And they got young here. One of the things I wanted to talk about in the movie, and we passed over it, but he has a heart attack when his daughter is born. And I think one of the things most people don't understand about whether it's stimulants, is they damage your heart. Long-term use of that stuff has permanent damage on your heart. And at least they show that in the movie, right? And to some degree, Carlos later, you see him using too, and he's all hyped up and stuff like that. But and with George, he has the heart attack, and he talks about doing 5 grams a day, right? Which is, I'm not surprised, right? You're poisoning your body, but your blood pressure goes up, and you're putting constant pressure on your heart. If you have any defects at all, you're going to have problems. And even if you were a healthy guy, it's going to permanently damage your heart over time. And they did show that. And those are kinds of, this is the whole, these are these spaces on X. So I go on and I have conversations, there's shows, and I went on one, and I talked about how marijuana is now, after people use chronic use of marijuana now that it's been legalized in a lot of states, they're developing chronic illnesses related to it, which I said, duh. Every legitimate study was saying that don't do this, whether it was the National Heart Association, National Lung Association, all these medical organizations don't do this, and the advocacy research says no, it'll be fine. Just like cigarettes will be. It was all about money, and now that it's starting to happen, my point is, who now pays for all these illnesses? Because you said, well, why don't we legalize it? Well, why should I have to pay for the medical problems you're going to have for chronic use of marijuana or cigarettes or anything else for that matter? Why? Because if we're going to have universal health, which is where they're going, that means all the healthy people get to pay for all the people who do stupid things. And so why should I? If you're a chronic user, why should we pay for you, right? And they all got mad, because they didn't like the cop in there telling them that they're full of it, but. And when I look at this guy, it will have, and he died fairly young. He wasn't that old when he died, but you start using that stuff, you use it for 20 years, you're going to have long-lasting impact on your health.
Well, I always said, the heart is like an engine, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on amphetamines for a long period of time, that's like running your car engine at full speed for days.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to that engine? It's going to break down eventually. And that's usually what happens. Same with, the marijuana thing. Years ago, when, California was thinking of, they did the medical marijuana, and one of my doctors was asking me, one of my many doctors lately, asked me years ago what I thought about legalizing marijuana. And I said, well, I've never been to a bar fight, or I've never been to a fight where 2 guys high on marijuana got into a fight. Been to many bar fights where everybody's drunk fighting. So I don't know. They're both not great for you. I said, and he says, well, I can see maybe there is, studies that shown that medical marijuana in certain instances can be beneficial. He goes, but smoking it, he goes, look at all the cases of lung cancer associated with cigarettes. And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you think it's healthy to breathe in smoke into your lungs? It's a burning plant, which tobacco is a plant. So basically you're doing the same thing. You're just not using cigarettes, you're using marijuana. So he goes, you watch 15, 20 years from now, he goes, you're going to see that lung cancer skyrockets. And it's not going to be smokers. It's going to be people that smoke marijuana. It's not going to be cigarettes. It's going to be marijuana. Just like vaping. Remember when vaping came out? Oh, this is so much better for you than smoking. Now it's like vaping's bad.
Yeah. I just, okay, so we legalize all this stuff, and now we got to pay for it, right?
Right.
And where does it end? And so, I mean, we make people wear helmets when they drive a motorcycle because we don't want to, if they get injured, we want to, pay for vegetables sitting on, so we expect people to take responsibility for their lives. Yet, we're going to say, oh, all these mind altering drugs, we're going to just let you do what you want to do. And but society needs to then take care of you. That's the part that drives me crazy. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
and when they bring up alcohol and marijuana, you know, okay, I agree. You know, I don't drink to excess, and I never smoked. But you know, I also recognize that that's something that's been around as an acceptable use for hundreds of years. But we're introducing things that have been around for a long time, but that we've had restrictions on, simply because people want the freedom of doing it, but they don't want the responsibility of what happens to them when they use it. Right? You know,
Right.
everybody else is supposed to chip in, I guess. So I think that was an important part, because you know, even though and this wasn't the best movie, I would say it was a good movie, entertaining movie. I think some of the actors did a decent job to make it probably better than it was. But I think it did try to show some of the downsides of this guy's life as a cocaine distributor, right? And the fact that he got hooked on his product, the fact that it had a permanent impact on his life, both physically and through relationships, right? And put him in prison for 20 years. So in some ways, it showed those realities. And yeah, I agree with you folks. It wasn't really a great a crime gangster movie, but this was about, I think they were trying to send a different message here. And not just a biographical one, but I think he was trying to give us a different message. What do you think, Martine?
I don't think they were trying to send any message. Again, I have ethical problems with the movie. At the end, he's just a good regular guy who happens to sell coke.
Yeah.
The hell?
Well, he's a regular guy that happens to sell coke, but has a heart problem and has strained relationships with his family. I guess that's the point I'm getting at. So they yeah, at first you see all the fun, but in the end, it does have
Nothing good came out of it.
yeah, it had detrimental impacts. Nothing really good came out of it, other than, you know, his life is now permanently enshrined to some degree, some variation of it, in a movie forever called Blow, right? That we just watched and reviewed. So I don't think anybody's going to make a movie on me, but still, this shows that it did show to some degree that the underbelly, the downside of being a drug trafficker. And he did survive, though. I mean, did you ever watch these things on YouTube, what the cartels do to torture people? And they have all these things all over there. And I'm just amazed at the violence that goes on in these cartels. And it's obviously gotten worse since this guy was in the business, but he managed to survive all that. But it does show the underbelly, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I don't think it was as back then in the 80s, it was as cutthroat as it is now. I mean, the proliferation of all these different cartels. I mean, you had the Medellin, the Cali, then you have all the cartels in Mexico, and again, it's all about money and power. And so I'm going to come after your cartel because I want your area of where you're dealing, right? And who wants? I don't know. For me, my life was complicated enough. Now it's pretty. I mean, like you were saying, I worked my ass off for 31 years, and then 4 years in the Marine Corps. I've been shot at many a times, as you can attest, but that was just one incident. But
I was there.
Now I get to reap the benefits of I'm out here in a serene place where I'm calm, peaceful, and I earned that. These guys never earned that. Could you imagine being in charge of one of the large cartels and knowing that at any moment 4 other guys from different cartels want to murder you? So you got to drive around with this huge entourage, just like when and then they want to say, "Oh, my poor life," like politicians, sports athletes, actors and actresses, and when they lament the fact that the press is always up in their shit. Excuse my language, but it's like you asked for that. You knew that came with the fame and the glory. You asked for that. So how do you lament that fact? That, like in this movie, he's lamenting part of the movie about, how his life turned out and his relationship with his daughter. And it's like, what do you think was going to happen? What was your end goal? What was your final, play? Nobody thinks that far ahead anymore.
No.
It's like, I'm going to take what I can get now and then worry about it later. when somebody else is paying for it. Because now I'm in prison. And
Yeah, he didn't raise it.
Paying for my incarceration.
And probably to help raise his daughter, too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We are at the end of our show. Thank you for joining us on Morning Coffee with the Chief, and we will be back next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Got to pick the movie yet, but looking forward to it. Scott, thanks for joining me. Martine, thanks for stepping up. And thank you guys for all joining us on the comments on the show. I think it was, overall, I thought it was a good movie, mostly because I like the actors, some of the actors involved. But it was constrained by the fact that it was a true story, so maybe it wasn't quite as action-packed as like Scarface. But all right, guys, hey, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Martin, you can take it away.
Y'all come back now, you hear? Matt Damon.